Okay, here's another week of rental house versus high income ETFs. And this episode is coming from a state park in Florida. I'm sitting at a picnic table. That's why there's no camera. Some people might think that's a good thing, but anyhow, it's pitch black. I'm sitting here, the only light I got is my computer screen. So even if I did have my camera on, you couldn't see me anyhow. So let's get going. So this week we were on the road traveling, so didn't get a chance to watch the market too well, but was able to pop in once in a while, see what was going on. And last week, if you watched that episode, you will remember that was the 1 year anniversary of starting this project, and we were up 36% for the year. And I'd love to say I'm up 40% at the start of the next 12 months, but sadly we're down a little bit, but that's okay because that's the way the stock market works. So if you like this type of thing, subscribe, like the video, turn on the notification thing. This here says, don't trust anything I say. Actually, this could be bad advice if you listen to some people. So we'll just leave it at that. And I like to look at the stock market in general to see how it's doing. And you can see that the S&P finished right about just a tad bit below the 20-day moving average, it looks like. So even though we had a down week, we are still hovering in this Bollinger Band and bouncing up and down and narrow size in the middle. So Friday ended up with a little bit of an uptick at the end of the market, and that after market hours on Friday, November 7th, it's up a little bit. So things are looking good for the beginning of next week, hopefully. If I'm cutting off any of the slides, I apologize in advance. I'm using actually Google Slides instead of PowerPoint because I don't have a PowerPoint installed on this laptop that I brought on vacation with me, but nobody cares about that. So anyhow, our account is sitting at 91,000, has some change, and margin I'm using is 78,000. You see that is uptick from last week a little bit because I went shopping, but we'll talk about that in a second. So these are all the shares that we're owning here. And if you look at MAGY, that's at 700 now because I bought 50 shares of that just today, actually. And we'll look at that here in a second. But these are the shares we own. And if you look at MAGY, it's actually down 1,000. My total cost is at 56.49 on average, and it's worth 55 today. But like I said, that's okay. So what's happened in the past week or so? Going back here November 3rd, we paid some interest on that margin that we're using that everybody thinks is the most horrible thing since, I don't know, COVID. So the next thing we have here is a dividend distribution, I should call it, from MAGY of $242. And here we have something that says canceled. I'll talk about that in about 3 seconds. So I bought 50 shares of MAGY, and you see here it says limit buy. So I actually had a limit buy in earlier, sitting there for 24 hours at 53 or 52 or something. And it was obvious that the market wasn't going to get that low. I canceled that and I put another market order in for 50 shares at $55. So basically, I'm saying if the price falls as low as 55, I'll buy 50 shares. And somewhere along the line, I ended up buying 55. So it might have happened somewhere in the middle of the night. So I ended up buying 55 shares. QDTE will be getting $245. That's pending. And then what's not shown on here is MAGY. Monday again, we'll be paying another $242 approximately. Things just keep rolling along. And you see here the history of things I bought. And down here, I bought those 50 shares for a total of $2,750. So for the month of October, we ended up at $39.91. And year to date, as of November 1st, was $44,392. And November is starting like normal. Got a distribution from MAGY, paid some interest on that margin, and then got that distribution from QDTE. And then Monday we'll get another from MAGY. Next Friday, QDTE. So we're up $148 for November. Actually, these two little measly distributions have paid the interest for the margin, plus I got 158 left over, so that's a good thing. So total, we have collected 44,551 in distributions, and that's since November 1st of 2024. And I think I mentioned this before, starting January 1st, I'm going to start this over, zero these out, and we'll start over. We'll refer back to this, see how we did overall, but we'll start fresh with some new numbers. And I like to see how we're doing overall compared to the market. So I'm sitting at 30%, 30.4%. Last week was 36%, so not a good week. And you see how we're doing compared to everything else. So this is since November 1st, 2024. The SPY is right about 12%. QQQ is almost like 16%. And then these other ETFs are the ones I'm holding. The AIPI is up 13%. GIAX is at 8%, which I'm disappointed in. So QDTE is at 12%, SPY is at 10%, and QQQI is at 12%. So these are the totals for the year. So I expect these to bounce back and we'll have a Christmas rally and everything will be hunky-dory by the end of the year. I'm pretty optimistic like that. And this here is what my projected was over here on the left, and over here is actually what happened. Last week here, we're sitting at 36% for the year. This right here, I projected I'd be up 48%. And I really projected I'd be up at 50% almost since the beginning of the project, but I'm at 30%. So I sure miscalculated that, didn't I? So you see what the account is worth as of today, as of right now. Those screenshots from Robinhood are a little bit older, so these have changed just a little bit. And here's my margin sitting at 77,000. Of course, that went up a little bit because I bought 50 shares at MAGY. I wasn't really planning on buying much of anything for the rest of the year unless the market took a dip, unless I could buy some more shares of something lower than my average that I've paid so far. So MAGY, I think my average that I bought was at 56. It went down to 55, so I bought some shares. So that lowered my cost average a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. Makes me feel better, so I can lower my average. So anyhow, I won't go through all these, but basically this is projected, and this is what's really happening. So I didn't really mention it. So if I would sell everything and quit today, I'd have 91,320. And we started at 70,000. So this whole project is based on comparing the money we received from a house we sold, a rental house, took those proceeds and dumped it into some ETFs, some cover call ETFs. And if you watch the episode, the end of the year roundup episode, I actually went through my tax returns, and I'll show you that in a minute, and looked at my 3-year average of expenses. And my 3-year average of expenses, so this is taxes, insurance, and maintenance, it was $375 a month approximately. And I was collecting $700 a month in rent. And this does not include any interest or mortgage payments. We had this house paid off, so that wasn't included. So I was only making, $325 a month positive cash flow. So not doing great. So I could have raised the rent probably $150 or so, could have got $850. Probably, if we had that house right now, probably squeeze $900 out of it. But the reason why I rent it for $700 is just to keep the renters from moving all the time. And the house was paid off. I was getting sick of maintenance on properties in general. So I kept the rents low on all my properties to keep the renters in there, keep them happy. They were paying on time for the most part. But then at the point came where I'm like looking at it and saying, wait a minute, I could sell these properties for several hundred thousands of dollars total. And instead I'm bringing home a positive cash flow of maybe a couple $1,000s a month. But I'm sitting on several $100,000 of equity in these houses. And so it just made sense to start selling everything, the apartment building and houses. We had a 5-unit apartment building. I'm glad we did what we did. So anyhow, if you paid attention to the episode last week, I showed the average of these are from our tax returns 2021, 2022, 2023, and you can see the rents received was only $609 a month. This tenant had got hurt at his job, and I gave him a couple months rent for free to help him out. So that was evidently in 2023. And then I don't know how I got a weird number. Oh, that's the average here. Yeah, so that was 2023. And then the average is 609. And then these are all the expenses, auto, travel. This auto here, we were in Utah. We made a trip back to address some issues with the house. Travel expenses are deductible for rental property, so that's why that was 1,400 and some odd dollars. And then see the insurance, and let's see down here is the big ones, taxes. Taxes now would be probably 2,200 to 2,400. I was guessing $200 a month on my previous guesses, and obviously that was a little bit low, but overall the expenses were higher, 370 approximately. Now, something I did not include when we sold the property, we did all types of repairs. We did some soffit fascia, some roof for some windows, and some replaced doors, and did all kinds of stuff because I wanted to get top value for the house. We sold it for $85,000. So before we sold it, we put 14,000, almost 15,000 into it from April. This April payment should have been actually for an expense, but that's okay. But we, from like June, is when we started working on the house, and we worked on it for 3 months down here at 917, and we spent like almost 15,000. We had to hire some things out because I don't like to get on roofs and hurt myself, so we paid for professionals to do some of that stuff. But anyhow, you can see all the expenses, and I think they're all on there. Yeah, so there's some big amounts like 3,000 here, and let's see, there's probably another few thousand down here somewhere that's hidden. If you would include that per month, that would average another $300 a month over the past 3 years or so. So if you would have added that in, the total monthly expenses would have been like almost $700 a month. So basically, for 3 years, we were breaking even on this house, and that doesn't include a mortgage on it. Anywho, I didn't include that stuff once again. I'm just including this, but really I should have. But like I said, we put that in after the tenants moved out, so it's hard to calculate that. So we sold the house for 85, and I took the proceeds, like 70,000, and put the ETFs. So anyhow, even though the market's down this week, year to date, the ETFs are still up by nearly $14,000. Yeah, I'll take that. So I went from basically breaking even to 14,000. When I toss in the real numbers, yeah, up 14,000. And just remember, this is not any type of advice. I'm not telling anybody else to do this. This is just what I'm doing, and I'm having fun with it. And I hope you enjoy these videos. If you do, subscribe, and we'll see you next week somewhere else in Florida. I think we'll be in the Florida Keys by then. So just moving along Florida on our vacation, and I'm trying to keep up with this at the same time.